Hello, my friends. What's one of the things I enjoy very much about our gathering is getting to connect with you all. And the no matter what is going on in my life, and I'm imagining no matter what's going on in your life, when you genuinely connect with others and have that moment of caring and of being and connecting with each other, for me, that's such a wonderful blueprint for the day. And one of the reasons that I like to do this on Monday is to set up a blueprint for presencing, connecting, and playing that we can use throughout the week. So that's part of what we're up to. And I'm finding my shoulders wanting to move today. So I'd like to have you start with just noticing, how are your shoulders wanting to move? And going ahead and letting that happen. For me, it's a kind of an oozy jiggle. So as I was thinking too about fear melters this morning, I was thinking about the difference between a wiggle and a jiggle. And that sometimes a wiggle is maybe a little too vigorous for what you're actually experiencing. And that I just did that technique this morning that I've told you all about when something is stuck or caught or tangled up in a knot, that jiggling actually works much better than pushing and trying to untangle. And so I want to apply that same principle to us because I pulled these necklaces out this morning and they were tangled up with each other. And in my former life, I would have gone whoa and blamed the necklaces and pulled on them. And so I just gently, I didn't wiggle them because that was too vigorous. I jiggled them, just a little jiggle, and they just poof, danced apart from each other with no problem at all and created space. So I invite you to tune into a place in you that feels either knotted or flatter or, and I'd like you to notice your usual response. My usual response is blame it and then tell it to shape up, just cut it out. And so notice what your usual technique for dealing with the part of you that's not completely enlightened already. And go ahead and exaggerate that for a minute. So for me, it would be kind of like, shoulders back, you can do this, you can handle it, rah, which I realize now is a form of fight. And what would happen if you applied first wiggling and then letting that wiggle become even gentler? And when I do that, I find that it wants to go in different directions. It gets much more dimensional. And then I start involving parts of me that I didn't even realize, like I'm already now jiggling my hips in a way that I hadn't even noticed that they could jiggle. So the jiggling, wiggling is a continuum of fear melter that I find really opens up kind of the in between spaces. There's a poem that I really like that talks about what's behind what you're seeing. Because a lot of us, give attention to ourselves and then don't let it land and go a little deeper, or we look out and kind of bounce off the things like, oh, that's terrible, and don't look at what's behind, what might be going on. So I'd like to have you apply the wiggle jiggle to something going on out in the world. Like I was just hearing from my friend who lives in Germany who had a very bad reaction to the vaccine. He was one of those rare people who got myocarditis. It affected his heart. And so my first response was like, and so I've been practicing with him, giving him attention and doing that kind of jiggle wiggle around his heart. And I heard from him today that he's actually on the mend, that he had surgery that was successful. And so I can now turn my attention toward, oh, and how's the rest of you? Because I've been focusing on his heart. So, how's the rest of you? And how's your wife? And giving attention to the whole family. So, I'd like you to notice something out there, and I'd like you to aim your attention, because that's what we can do with our loop of attention, is to gather it and aim it. And I'd like you to aim it with a kind of a wiggle jiggle, with the intention of what's under that and what's behind that, and how can I let my attention flow and be a source of presence and connection, even though I'm not there. I have very convincing evidence that we can send our attention across time and space. And so I want you to experiment with that this week, giving it to you and going into your inner frontier in areas that you may not have, but also then giving it out to people that you may not even know, that you want to, oh, I can see and feel a knot there, and who doesn't have a knot someplace, and kind of giving them a little wiggle jiggle. It's kind of a, I'm thinking too a little bit of Greek dancing, where you kind of do the, you can do the wiggle jiggle in this, horizontal as well, and you can add in different sounds. And so let the wiggle jiggle alternate between giving it out and letting it land, and then giving it in and letting it land. So this time I'm letting mine go right at the top of my shoulders where they enter my neck. Because I've had the tendency all my life to sort of stick my neck out. I got my, I'm out there getting my head out in front of the rest of me. And so I'm doing a little wiggle jiggle right where my head connects with my shoulders, and finding out like what's under that wants to wiggle jiggle. And what's above. So I noticed Darlene doing some face flapping. So that's another great wiggle jiggle. So you can do it very vigorously. And you can also do it more like a jiggle wiggle. So I'm noticing, I've been trained, and I bet you've been trained, to just kind of push on through, don't be a wuss, just, you can handle it. And what I've noticed is that stuck places and flat places respond much better to gentleness. And so I wonder if you would be willing this week to be gentle with yourself, especially in the stuck places. And let's add in now, we can scoop up some extra love. And while you're doing that, I'm just aiming this over here so that you can see right here in my chair is someone who's a master of wiggling and jiggling. This is my cat Greta, and she's kind of blended into uh, the blanket there, but you can see we had some wiggling and jiggling earlier. And so now she's taking that in. So you can do some love scoops from something that you're noticing. You can just grab, because we're surrounded by attention and love, and you can have it, and you can share it with any place in you. So you can do a scoop and then a wiggle jiggle. So I'm going to scoop into this area here and appreciate myself for being willing to stick my neck out. Also saying, hey, I can back you up. You can approach this with your whole being, not just your head. So I can give love scoops and then wiggle jiggles. And then you can scoop up some love and offer it out, letting it land on someone or even a situation. So I'm right now, I'm letting it land on the whole area that I live in and letting that attention just sink in, like the morning fog or the morning dew. And then, feeling there's certainly in the parchedness of where I live right now, the wiggle jiggle actually makes space for some breath, for some moisture. Hmm. So alternating between giving attention to you and noticing, do you really let it land? When you love scoop to you, do you let it land? One of the habits we have as humans is to go heady almost instantaneously. So you might notice that you do a love scoop or a wiggle jiggle and you start to let it land. And then almost immediately your head's going to get in there and go, well, that wasn't a very good love scoop. Or, uh, your timing is off. Or, uh, what's that really about? And are you ever going to get through this? Are you just going to have to keep doing love scoops forever? This love scoopy doopy. So notice your head wants to get in. So I'd like you to give some love scoops to your head, some wiggle jiggles to your head. Yeah, some wiggle jiggles, some gentle, love scooping as much as you want to, and giving that to your head, the back of your neck. And let your breath allow you to absorb. So take a breath all around the wiggle jiggle with the intention of letting that land and be absorbed. Yes. And I love the way that you're letting your whole body participate. Thank you for doing that. So you may notice that some other part of you goes, oh, I want to play too. Like right now, my feet are going, me, I want to play too. And they're doing their own little wiggle jiggle. So as you give attention to you, you're going to start lighting up and you can go, oh, okay, good. You can be included too. You can be included too. And let your attention go out to someone you know who tends to get a little bit heady, who may always be saying, where's the data? How do you know that? Yeah, yeah, you can wiggle jiggle them. So I'd like you to let your loving attention go out and just kind of wiggling, jiggling so that your friend, your colleague can sink into their whole body awareness, their whole body aliveness. And then I'd love to have you, if you're not already, I'd love to have you get standing and let yourself do just a little bit of playing in our last minute or so with love scooping, ah, letting it land, letting it wiggle jiggle. I'm finding that doing this over the last several minutes has already created some kind of lightness, more spaciousness, and then gathering up and letting that be like dandelion or a giant sprinkler that you send it out into the world, letting it land and letting yourself now connect with, you can be wiggling and jiggling and love scooping for you and giving that out into the world. Mm. And noticing if, as you're standing, is there any other place in you that would like to have your attention, would like a wiggle jiggle, would like a love scoop? Beautiful. And see if you would be willing to return to this during the week so that you love scoop, wiggle jiggle, love scoop in, wiggle jiggle, love scoop out, wiggle jiggle. And if you do that for just a few minutes, my sense is that it will open up space for giving and receiving more love and attention, which is, after all, what we're up to. That's what we're up to in the world, is expanding our capacity to give and receive more love every day. So see if you'd be willing to take that on, if you'd be willing to expand your capacity to give and receive more love every day. Because I'm imagining that we've got people who are balanced in the direction of giving here. So a little bit more receiving. I know you're going to be giving because that's what you do. So give it attention to receiving also. Yum. Ah, thank you so much. Wonderful to see your faces and where you're located, and really appreciate you showing up in the middle of summer. And so, mwah, until next time, I'm going to go ahead and leave, and you're totally welcome to stay and connect with each other some more. And I'll see you next time. Mwah. Take care.
Thank you, Katie. Mwah.